All right. Back here for another stream tonight. Today I'm actually going live at 2 a.m., which typically I try to do them at like maybe 11:30, 12, sometimes 1. But tonight we had a late start, but that's okay. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of shit going on. What we're talking about. You know, in uh, in the world or on YouTube. A lot of shit going on, right? Like one thing I want to talk about is I notice people tell me, like in the comments, that they don't get notifications. Say, for instance, like if I upload a video or do a live stream, nobody gets notifications of that. Like, say for instance, like if somebody wanted to stop and listen to the stream live, they would have to like scroll past it on YouTube and like see it live. Like they won't get a notification. Like say if you're on your phone or something, you know how you get like a notification that'll pop up on the screen. Like if somebody just uploaded something or is doing a live stream, you get notified of it, right? But since my content is shadow banned on this platform, YouTube is doing shady things. And it's not just me, right? There's, hundreds of thousands of other people out there, maybe even millions, who they're doing this to at this point, right? Like if you speak against the, mainstream narrative, you're a target, right? You got a target on your back, for lack of better terms. Like say, for instance, like there's this guy I watch on YouTube. His YouTube channel is entitled Prepper University, right? If you want to look him up, his channel is named Prepper University. And, this guy talks about a bunch of topics, everything from, prepping to, conspiracies and, not trusting the government. So his stuff gets shadow banned, right? Like he used to, on some of his videos, he used to get like, what, maybe 70,000 views, 100,000 views, but now his videos are getting like, what, maybe 3,000, 4,000 views. So it shows that they shadow ban and censor, certain people that speak against, the agendas they have. So YouTube is definitely a biased platform. Like say for instance, I'll give you another example. Like, when I come on here and, speak here for maybe the 100 people that might tune in and listen to this live stream, I have to sit here and be careful with, certain words that I use so I don't offend, the great God, YouTube, right? So I gotta, use censored words and, code words, um, and speak in code basically on certain topics so I don't get flagged by the algorithm that searches for these videos, right? But yet here it is on the other hand, I notice it's like, how is it that there's channels on YouTube that have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers where they'll literally do videos and speak about some of these things openly. Like say for instance, like the whole Corolla thing, they'll openly speak about that without even using code languages, right? And are sitting there questioning the mainstream view and nothing happens to them. It's like, wait a second, so why the hell are y'all letting these people come on here and challenge the WHO, inside joke, right? Challenge the WHO, which you should know what WHO stands for. Um, but why are these guys allowed to come on here and say things that go against WHO? But here it is, if we say something even in the slightest, we'll get censored and, flagged and, get our stuff censored. Like that's a complete double standard, right? That is a complete double standard, um, by this platform. And it should be called out, right? YouTube deserves to be called out for the, complete double standard that they have on this platform. And, of course, to be fair, it's not only them. Like, I'm sure many of these other, social media websites out there, are using some type of, censoring, right? And they're definitely pushing agendas, right? Like, say, for instance, typically some of the popular people that you see on these websites are people that are, pro rainbow, LGQ plus community, right? That they push that. But if there's a celebrity that comes up and speaks against that, they'll get censored. Their stuff will start to lose followers. And all types of stuff like that. But on the other hand, the people who are down with all of this, the people that don't have anything to say about the corruption and the backwardness that's going on in the society, those people are going to be there getting promoted. And it shouldn't be that way. Like it shouldn't be this way. Like I remember there was a time, like say maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, you could come on YouTube and you could openly, speak your mind with very minimal amount of, sensory that was going on, right? Very minimal amount. But here it is today. You can't even come on here and say that there's only two genders, right? If you come on YouTube and say that now you'll get censored for that, right? You got to be politically correct and say, well, there's more than two, right? There's like four or five or whatever it is now. You got to like say that shit when you come on here in order to be accepted. And that's just pathetic. Like, it shouldn't be this way. And it's funny because it's not only on social media, but it's even, these churchgoers in real life. Right? Like I mentioned on a couple streams back that I know some people I grew up with who are children of a church pastor, right? So here it is now, even though they grew up in the church, here it is now in their 20s, they believe that, love is love, right? They can love who they want. We shouldn't, say anything, negative about, these rainbow peoples. Hey, they can love who they want, right? Like that's the mindset that these people are in out here. Even these people who, went to church their whole life, right? That's why I say, for instance, if I go downtown, like half of the churches downtown, they're down with what's going on. First of all, they're under something called a 501c3. If you don't know what that means, which you can do a quick Google search on that if you want to read up on it. But a 501c3 basically means that they get to keep the money they make. They don't have to pay tax to the state. But in return, they have to go along with, legalities and restrictions. Like, say, for instance, you have to, let these certain groups of people into your congregation, right? Like, you can't tell them that they can't go there because that would be against the establishment. You have to openly accept these people, right? You have to openly accept these people, and you can't go out and say things against the establishment because that would go against a 501c3 charter, right? So first of all, they're under that agreement with the government, and then second of all, half the churches out here are flying pride flags outside the churches. It's like shit. I knew that Christians don't read their Bible, but I mean, are we really at this point now where, everybody is like so, deluded and dumbed down, where now even religious people now believe that like God is okay with, people that are unclear about their genders and about, this rainbow lifestyle out here? Like seriously, it's, really hard to believe that people in today's day and age are so deluded and dumbed down to the fact that now they believe that God's okay with this stuff. It's like, I mean, shit, all you got to do is open up the Bible and read like Leviticus 20:13. What about some of these transformers? Well, first of all, the Bible says, I believe that's Deuteronomy 22:5, right? It says a man should not wear a woman's apparel and a woman should not wear a man's apparel, right? So first of all, the God of the Bible says that it's an abomination for a woman to wear men's clothing and a man to wear women's clothing. So if he's not okay with that, then how much more is he not okay with people undergoing surgeries to try to change their genders. Like, think about that for a second. But people out here are just going along with the times. The whatever is accepted in the modern society. That's what the church accepts. And it's sad. It shouldn't be this way. There should be some type of restrictions in place, right? Like some type of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess we could say, for lack of better terms, there should be some type of pushback, right? There should be some type of pushback against, the dogma and these beliefs that we're seeing out here in the society. But everybody to just, bend over and accept whatever the government, pushes down their throats. It's sad and it's pathetic out here. Like, like you can push these people over like a damn, domino, right? It's not very hard, right? Like these people are, soft. Shit, like I'll give you an example, right? Like there's grown dudes out here that go around and confess that they're a woman, and if you try to, confront them and explain to them how, they're actually a dude, they'll get deeply offended at that. And I've seen it happen for myself in real time. And that's just sad and pathetic. Like, what does that say about a society if, people in their mid-20s are unclear about what gender they actually are? Like, I mean, seriously, like, it's unbelievable, the trash we have out here in the society, man. It's unbelievable, the garbage that's accepted out here. Hey, Rocky Shepherd, are you a preterist? You preterist? It's a question for you. Bear for me a second. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, I don't get what your post is. But going back to what I was saying, it's pathetic. The lows that people have to stoop to out here. It's pathetic to me. Oh, he said partial preterist. I mean, I'll say this, right? I think that I think maybe we could agree to this, right? Full preterism, is definitely, you know, like the most waxed doctrine around, right? I think partial preterism is clearly not true either, but I think it's less crazy to believe that than it is to believe that, like, literally everything in the Bible has already happened. Right? Because, a lot of people don't know it. There's a difference between the two of them, right? There's something called a full preterist and there's something called a partial preterist, right? The partial preterist believes that most things in the Bible happen, but not everything. But then the full one obviously believes that everything happened in the Bible, right? So there are differences between the two. Again, I disagree with both of the views, but, it is important to realize there are differences between the two of them. Here, bear for me a second. Yo, Rocky, you want to hop up on stage? You want to come up here? Just let me know. Futurism, I don't think futurism is a denomination. That's just like a term that they put on people that like, say for instance, right? Like if I talk to this guy, professing preterist, which I'm sure you probably know him. If I was to talk to him, he would call me a futurist, right? Even though I wouldn't use that term. But what they mean by that is like people who believe that there's like, future things that are going to happen that are in the Bible. right? Such as Christ's second return. All right, you want to come up? I'll drop a link for you. Satan's little season. Oh, so you believe we're in that time now? I mean, that's an interesting view. I mean, I wouldn't hold that obviously, but I've heard that before. All right, we'll give him a minute to get that set up on his side. Yo, Rocky, can you hear me? Yo, you there?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Uh,
All right, is this your first time on my panel? I don't remember speaking to an individual by the name before.
yeah, this is my first time on your panel.
All right, cool. So, if you want, you can take like a minute or two just to explain to the people who will be listening to this discussion, your views and your belief regarding partial preterism.
Okay, I used to be like, like you. I used to believe that uh, Revelations is all future, except for maybe chapters 1, 2, and 3. But that Revelations was all futuristic, that it foretold, uh, you know, the rapture, the millennial, told of the rapture, the tribulation, and those that specific time. And but I've been researching and studying. The Bible says in Matthew's 24, I think it's 24:34 or something. Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass before you see all these things," or something. He was talking to those people then. He was saying, "This generation shall not pass until all these things," and he was talking about, you know, the tribulation, the rapture, and all those kind of things. Okay, so most people believe that dispensationalism means uh, that you believe that the Jews have to reconstruct the temple so that it can be destroyed. And the Antichrist has to be in it so that it can be destroyed and that Revelations can be fulfilled. That's where Zionism comes from. That's why people support Israel, because according to these people, that they're still God's chosen people. But if you realize that when Stephen was stoned, Christ divorced Israel. He left the house of Israel. He no longer was in the house of Israel. And 70 AD was the destruction of the temple. Nero, in Hebrew gematria, Caesar Nero translates to 666. Paul or John, he wrote it in a kind of like only Hebrews would know, that if you wrote those letters out, they can be translated into numbers, which equals 666. So Nero was the Antichrist. The tribulation is over. Rome was destroyed in a great, something happened. The earth, a great destruction. There's history divides Rome, being said the Rome was destroyed in the uh, 3rd or 4th century. And then they have, so they added like some time to our history. They've lied about our history. They're hiding the millennial reign. 1776, the Statue of Liberty is basically a statue of Satan. And if you look at her ankle, it shows a chain around its ankle that has been broken. And in Revelations 20, in Satan's little season, it talks about that Satan's chain will be
Well,
broken.
real quick, could I ask you on that? What's the correlation between the Statue of Liberty and 1776? As far as I know, if you look it up, it says the Statue of Liberty was established in like what is it, 1870s or 1880s. So what's the correlation with the statue in 1776?
Okay, well, some people are trying to figure out when Satan's little season started, and so they're figuring maybe 1776 because they're openly showing you that a Statue of Liberty given to us by the French during the French Revolution. It was all about the French Revolution. 1776 was also the date the Illuminati
So
was
so we're
created.
only not to cut you off, but to go by what you're saying, right? Like if you're saying it started in like 1776, so that was like 240 some years ago. So if that was the case, so you're saying that we're only like 200 and something all on years into the millennia reign for 1,000 years.
No, what I'm saying is in 70 AD, that was okay. 66 AD to 74 AD was the tribulation. That's when all that happened. After that, I don't know how long, maybe, I don't know if it started. It wasn't so Israel, the people were warned in Revelations for Israel to flee to the mount, to get out of Jerusalem before the tribulation, to go to the mountains. They did that. They fled. That was the remnant, the Jewish remnant, the remnant of Christian, the Jews that believed God and believed John. When John told them flee, they fled because that was the remnant. They believed John, they believed in Jesus, and so they fled. That was the beginning of the millennial reign. And if you look at history, our history, they say that the Dark Ages, or they call it the Middle Ages, was full of darkness and just a dark time. Everybody died early and all that. But if you look at that period, that's when they built the beautiful. It was like Christendom. Everything was built to glorify God. All these magnificent cathedrals around the world were built, and they all glorified God. And some of the old Roman structures survived the the tribulation, and so that Rome's buildings survived, and so the uh, the saints, and so Jesus ruled for 1,000 years through the church. Now, was Christ literally on earth when that was happening, or did he reign from heaven? I'm not particularly sure whether it was a physical Christ was on the earth reigning during the millennial reign, or if it was like he was on the throne in heaven and ruling from there. But
But
we're
could I
saying,
ask you on that? Like say for instance though, like if you read Revelation chapter 1 verse 7, it says, "For he shall come with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even they that pierced him." So if you're saying it was like not physically there, why is it saying that everybody would see him physically?
okay, then maybe most people believe he did come physically. I
So
just
you're saying you're saying his second coming, right? That would be the disagreement. I don't believe that he came back yet, but in your position, you believe he did, but
okay.
you
His
said it was like
second coming.
metaphoric, not physically.
Are you saying there's only two comings?
Yeah, when I read the Bible, it only speaks about a first coming of Christ, which was when he was born, died, and rose again, and then he has a second coming at the end times. That's my view on it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's people that believe that we're waiting for Revelations to begin, that he's going to come back. That's the second coming. They believe that's the second coming. I believe that Christ has already came. He's ruled for 1,000 years, and the only second coming is in Revelations 20 when the camp of the saints is surrounded, and then fire comes down, surrounded by Gog and Magog. In Revelations, Gog and
Well,
Magog will
yeah.
surround the remnant,
Well,
and
I
then
mean, there's
God
other
will.
quotes to it as well. Like, say, for instance, like Amos 5:18, or Isaiah 63, Isaiah 66:15 on down. So, I mean, there's plenty of quotes to this like day of the Lord when Christ was coming back a second time to bring judgment on the world. There's plenty of quotes other than
Yeah,
just
I
like the one
believe
that
that
you
happened
quoted.
already. Yeah, I believe that. I do believe that happened
Right,
already.
and let me take a guess real quick. You'd say that happened in 70 A.D., correct?
That was like mid tribulations. Yeah,
So when did he come back then?
sometime after 74. I haven't.
I mean,
I,
that's an
maybe
interesting
maybe
point
he
then,
was.
because
No.
because when I talk to other
What does
preterists,
it say?
right?
What does it say? What do you say? When does he come back?
Well,
In Revelations, he comes back after the tribulation, right?
yeah, but that's in Matthew as well. Like, I'll give an example for the audience. Like, if you read
So
Matthew
then he came
24,
back after
wait, just
74.
just re- just real quick, just let me finish real quick. Like, if you read Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, it says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days will the Son of Man return and then send his angels to gather together his elect." Right. So the
Yeah,
Bible depicts Christ coming back at the end of the great tribulation.
yeah. So I believe the tribulation is between 66, 64 AD. So he would have come back in 64 AD and reigned for 1,000 years.
Wait, so you're saying that
And
Christ came back before 70 AD then?
I said after 74 AD.
I thought you said 64.
I said the tribulation was between 66 AD and 74 AD. So that's the 7 years. Christ would have came after 74 AD when the tribulation was over. The
So
tribulation,
he wasn't present during the siege then, because every other preterist I've talked to over the years, they tell me that they believe that Christ was there present during the 70 AD siege.
Christ was at the 78. Rome surrounded Jerusalem in 70 AD and destroyed it.
Right,
That's history. That's history. The
right.
temple was destroyed. The Bible never speaks in Revelation of a third temple being built. We are the temple. So the reason I'm saying this is people believe that Zionists, these people, this Israel, this Palestine debate, that are these chosen people, these they call themselves Israel, that they're the chosen people. That's a false paradigm because God divorced Israel when they stoned Stephen and they rejected their Messiah. And so the whole paradigm where you believe that you're waiting for the tribulation events and you're waiting for Revelation to be fulfilled, this is why we have these problems right now. Why we can't understand,
What
you
what
know.
what problems would those be, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, well, a lot of people believe that the present day Israel are God's chosen people, but yet we know.
Yeah, I don't hold that view, just so you know.
Okay, well, there's a lot of Christians who believe in Zionism, which is based on Revelations being futuristic. If you know that the temple was destroyed, God divorced Israel, and that they're no longer that the church
You see,
replaced it.
here's something I'm confused on that doesn't make a lot of sense with the stance you're saying, though, is because, like, when you read Matthew 24, Christ gives all the signs about, what to look out for. But my question for you is, if all this happened 1,000, or say 2,000 years ago, well, why are we seeing all those signs happening around the world today? Like, you could literally go through the list and you see just about everything that Christ said that would happen in the last days. You see that all happening around the world. Like, I'll give a couple examples. Wars and rumors of wars, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, uproars of the people, mass die-offs of animal life, and so on and so forth. We see all of those things happening at an increasing rate over the past, say, decade or two. So, like, if all that happened 2,000 years ago, why are we seeing it happening right now then?
Well, Satan's got a standard modus operandi. He's reestablishing Rome right now. The United States is Rome. We got the Roman Empire being built. The Republic of Rome, the Statue of Liberty represents Rome, the Public of Rome. Satan is reestablishing Rome. He does it, and he just does that. Well, if you
Wait, so
read
you'd say
Matthew,
that Rome?
okay, let me read Matthew 24. 34. This is Jesus speaking. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So are you telling me that Jesus lied to that generation? Because he said this, he's talking to that generation. He said, this generation shall not pass
No,
till all.
I wouldn't
Are you
say that he
saying
would.
that he lied to those people and that the generation is really 2,000 years
All
somewhere in
right,
the
so
future?
slow down for a second. I'm not saying that Christ is lying. Well, there's two ways we could explain this. Either he's speaking about the generation who sees these things; they're going to see all of it happen, and they're not going to pass until all the things are fulfilled. But then also something from my perspective, I believe that there is regeneration. I believe there's a reincarnation. So people born back then, I believe they're walking the earth right now today again. So some of those people who were back then, they could be alive now and are going to witness those things. So I would have a different perspective than a regular Christian that you might have spoke to in the past.
Okay, so this is what the futurists say. They say that John wrote. I'm giving you both perspectives. I'm not. You can believe whatever you want. It's not to me a salvational issue. I don't know, but
What
so
real quick clarify what's not the salvational issue though?
whether whether you're a preterist or a dispensationalist.
Well, I mean, I would say for instance, the Bible says in Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10, it says, "For the testimony of Christ is the spirit of prophecy," right? So, say for instance, one thing that I teach over here is about these prophecies, right? And that's what the Bible says the testimony of
Okay.
Christ is. So, if we take all the prophecies away, then how could you all have the testimony of Christ if it says that the testimony of Christ is a spirit of prophecy?
Okay. So what I was saying is, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. He's talking to those people. He never said the generation in the future. These things happen to. Okay, a lot of people bring in like the 490-year prophecy, the seven last years, and they say that's the tribulation or something, and that's to judge Israel. And but that was a 490-year prophecy, was fulfilled when Christ came. That was the 7 years when Christ's ministry. And so but some people say that the 70th, or what week was it? The
I'm
70th
not
week,
sure what you're referring to. I haven't heard the 490
Daniel
years.
prophecy, the Daniel prophecy, the last 7 years of the 490-year prophecy.
What's the 490-year prophecy? I haven't heard that term used on here.
Okay.
Like, I know there's
Well,
something called a 400-year prophecy, but 490, I haven't heard of that one.
well,
You know, like
when
I'll give you an example if you don't know the 400-year
with
prophecy. It's
Daniel, the
from
prophecy of
Genesis, I want to
Daniel,
say
you don't
15,
know the
13.
prophecy of Daniel. You don't know the prophecy of Daniel, the
I didn't
490
say
year.
I didn't say I didn't know Daniel's prophecies, but I'm saying the 490 years, it's at least, what's the word I'm looking for? Pacific, for lack of better terms, right? So I'm saying I've heard of the 400-year prophecy, but 490, I'm not sure where you got the 90 from.
Okay. Well, I thought you were probably a little more
I
versed
mean,
on scripture.
there's no reason to be disrespectful. I mean, I'm allowing you on my platform to share your views, and I'm being very polite with you. And I will say, I think you're dodging a lot of the points that I'm bringing up here, such as, say, for instance, you're saying all the prophecies, like the end times, happened 2,000 years ago. But yet I cornered you and said, well, wait, why are we seeing literally everything that he said happening right now in the world? Like, I'll give you an example. Are you not aware that there's the biggest war taking place right now since the Second World War? What's like, why is that taking place right now? Doesn't that correlate back to what Christ said that in the last days there would be nations fighting against
Oh,
other nations and rumors of wars? Like, what about the rumor that China's about to invade Taiwan? They're circling the island every 24 hours over there. So that's a
That
rumor
happened.
going on over there, right?
That already happened. Also, there was
Wait, what already happened?
wars, wars and rumors of wars in 70 A.D. Rome was surrounding Jerusalem.
I
There were
don't deny
wars,
that.
rumors of wars all over the place. Rome
Again,
was defeated.
I don't deny the history
Do
of
you
70
deny
AD, but
that
I'm
Rome
saying
was
we see.
defeated? Do you
Yo,
deny
chill
that
for a
Rome was
second.
Do you deny that Rome was defeated by Christianity at a certain period in our history?
Was defeated by Christianity. As far as the fall of
Overtaken,
Rome,
overtaken the world. The world
take,
stopped being
hey,
Roman
bro,
and started being
just
Christian.
chill for a second. Rome fell by legions of barbarians. That's what the downfall of the Roman Empire was, by legions of barbarians, not by Christianity.
That's what you're told, right?
Wait,
Barbarians.
so where
So,
would you get the
so
wait?
the
So are you
Christians
saying
were
that like the
barbarians.
Crusaders? Are you saying the Christian Crusaders overthrew Rome? Is that your position? You're
The,
familiar with the Crusaders,
the
right?
millennial
The
reign
Christian warriors.
started after 74 AD. Rome conquered Jerusalem, and then Rome fell. And how did the Christians over? It was through martyrism. Remember the martyrs? Rome, the martyrs were being killed. Rome was killing the first century Jews, and if you didn't agree to worship Roman gods, which was the mark, you would be killed. That happened. Okay, and that's how Christianity spread. And then right after that period of time, after the martyrs, Christendom came. The everything was about Christendom. They say the Dark Age. They call it the Dark Ages, but it was really the millennial reign. And you say that during there'll be wars and rumors of wars before the tribulation. Yes, that happened. There was wars and rumors of wars. That's history. But the 490-year prophecy. Some people use the seven. It's called the 70 weeks, the period of 7 years, which totals for the 70-week prophecy. And some people said the last week would be the. They're saying that that's for the Jews, and that hasn't happened yet, and that's their reason to say that the tribulation hasn't happened yet, is because Daniel's 490-year prophecy hasn't been fulfilled. So that's just one reason that some of the I don't believe that. I believe the 490-year prophecy was 490 years long, not 200, 490 years long, but 490 years long. Some people used, I was just explaining to you that some dispensationalists and Zionists who believe that Jerusalem must be rebuilt is because they believe that the 490 or 70-week prophecy has not been fulfilled yet. But I believe it has been fulfilled. That's why it's called a 490-year prophecy, not a 2,490-year prophecy. Anyway, there are wars and rumors of wars. There's always been wars and rumors of wars back in that period when Rome was nothing but wars and rumors of wars. And yeah, so yeah, that
Right, like
yeah,
again,
that's
I
mistaken.
don't deny that there were wars going on throughout all history. I'm not in disagreement with that. But what I'm saying is when Christ gave what to look out for, say Mark 13, Luke 21, Matthew 24, all of the signs that he said to look out for are happening right now around the world. So I'm saying if
Mm.
you're saying that already took place 2,000 years ago, why are we seeing all of that taking place right now today? That was my question for you.
Oh well, there's a modus operandi of Satan. I don't know, he likes wars or something, but just
You
because
familiar with Exodus 15:3? It says, "For the Lord is a man of war."
yeah, God is also a great warrior too. Yeah, I know.
Right. But I just find it strange though to
Is that
believe that like that.
your whole thing is because there's wars and rumors of wars that we must
Well,
be in the tribulation?
I'm once again, my friend. If you paid attention, I gave you like 10 things I mentioned that Christ mentioned, such as say the earthquakes in diverse places, the uproars of the people, right, the civil unrest. a mass die-off of animals. So I gave you multiple examples of things that he brought up, like warning signs that we see literally happening like every other day around the world. So I just find it strange how you could say like all those things are like done in the past and
Well, if
don't
you did
correlate with today.
maybe
That doesn't seem
maybe
to match up.
maybe before you would you should do a little more research into it. I could
Into
give you
into
some,
what subject, if you don't mind me
I could
asking?
give you some channels. The this is there's a lot of Christians and on the internet that are like going through some of this and trying to figure out this, and it's you could just punch in
No, but
like
I'm
little
okay. Go ahead.
season. I'm trying to explain it to you, but I don't know. I'm doing
I,
the
I just
best
I
I can.
just said I just said go ahead, dude.
There's well, we believe what Jesus said. He says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, this generation shall not pass before you see all these things." Right after he described uh, the tribulation events and him, the day of the Lord. He says the day of the Lord is right around the corner. John wrote the book of Revelations to warn that generation. He was to flee Jerusalem. 1/3 of them fled. That was the remnant. That was the people that believed uh, John and believed Jesus and believed in the remnant, the church. They fled into the mountains, and the tribulation happened. They survived because they did what they were told. 2/3 of Jerusalem, when Rome surrounded it, were destroyed. Only 1/3 escaped, like it says in would happen. That happened, and it's part of history. It's history. We know that
Real
Jerusalem
quick,
was destroyed by
with
Rome.
your notion, like when would you say that Revelation 19 happened when Christ gathered the armies in the Battle of Armageddon and defeated all of them? Like when would you say that happened then?
Well, that was in the first century.
First century, like what time? And there's like a certain war that happened that you could name.
Well, the tribulation, a great earthquake happened. Rome was destroyed by fire, by pestilence. The world, it was under judgment. It's, the tribulation events are, it says, are the such times will never happen again. It's like it's
But wait a second though. Wait, such times won't happen again. Well, what about the 20th century? There was literally World War I and World War II killed 100+ million people. That was much more severe than anything in the Middle Ages, right?
no. During the
Okay, what's
tribulation
more severe
of
than
the
that?
first century, if you look at history, they say in the first century, all this great stuff happened. And if you look at the fifth century, they say the fifth century in the ninth century, they say all these that there was a great world catastrophes. Volcanoes went off all over the world
Well,
between the
I
first
understand that,
and
but
ninth
at the
century.
beginning of our
But
discussion, you said that they lied about our history.
what the thing is, that really wasn't over 900 years. It was over. It was all happened. It was one event, but they stretch it over 900 years. They say that these volcanoes went off over here, and this destroyed all of this, and then this earthquake happened here, and this happened, and but it all was one event, which they try to spread over 900 years. There's a
What was that
historian.
one event?
If you want to, if you want, I can give you a historian, and a bunch of historians say that the first century has been spread over more than the 100 years it was, that it was spread over 900 years to make you believe that all these separate events happened in different periods of time, when all these tribulation events like the earthquake, I mean the volcanoes going off here and going off there, uh, all went off at the same time, and the great earthquake happened at the same time, and all these pestilence that destroyed and killed people, that already happened. But they try to say they were events over 900 years, but they didn't. They were all in the first century 7-year tribulation. That's what they're hiding. They're hiding history. So they say that the Dark Ages, when they call the Dark Ages, was around 1,000 or something, or but it's really still a part of the millennial reign. When they say, they say that all these beautiful cathedrals where they build that all glorify God, and it used to be chivalry, and the King of Kings was in charge. That's Jesus, and all the other kings either had to pay homage to him, or so it was under the rod. It was like the Knights
Wait, but
Templars.
I got a question for you on that. You said all the other kings had to pay reference to Christ, but then earlier you said he wasn't physically on the earth. So how would they pay homage to
I
him with
didn't
these
say
like
he wasn't
cathedral
physically.
buildings and all that?
I never said that. I never said that. I said some people think he reigned on the earth physically, and some people believe that he reigned from heaven and he worked through the
Okay,
church.
but now clarify this though, because if I'm not mistaken, I asked you earlier on this, and you were saying something along the lines of Christ didn't like physically come to the
I
earth back in the first
don't.
century. But wait, just before you chime in, I'm going to give you a chance to reiterate now, so I understand. Do you believe Christ physically came to the earth in his second return, or was it like a spiritual thing, like not physical?
Okay, I'm still pondering on that, because Christ does say that we are the body of Christ. So if we are the body of Christ and we reign during that time as the body, and the saints, it says the saints and Christ will reign for 1,000 years. Does he reign through his body and the saints, the resurrected saints? Is that how come all these beautiful buildings that we can't construct nowadays? They say that were built in the, 1000 AD. All these beautiful structures, they were built,
How can they
with
not
where
reconstruct those today? Wait, but I just don't think that's a fair statement to say they couldn't reconstruct them today if they're building churches out here, mega churches that are like 3 times bigger than them, right?
these are all built out of stone and carvings. That they say that it was the Dark Ages, but yet they had tools to build stone structures that are more beautiful carvings and that we could do now. But this was during Christ's reign, is what I'm saying, and that people
During Christ's reign.
Satan was bound, so Satan didn't interrupt them. And it was under Christ's reign.
Well,
In the
Satan
Bible,
didn't
if you
interrupt them. Why
realize
were there
that
all these conflicts though throughout the time
during
though?
during Christ's millennial reign, it says that Christ will reign with an iron rod. It doesn't say
Right.
that it doesn't say that there's no more kings, that there's no more conflict. It doesn't say that. It just
Right,
says that.
I understand, but here's the other dilemma though. But the point you brought up, it says Christ will rule with an iron rod, but doesn't that prove that he physically is going to be there if he's ruling with an iron rod?
Yeah, I'm believing that maybe he was physically reigning. Where is and it talks about so where would he be? Would he the camp of the saints? Where would that be? We're trying to figure it. In Revelations 20, it talks about the camp of the saints. Where are the saints now then? If we're in Satan's little season, where did they go? Yeah, well, I don't know
Oh,
everything. I
so
just
wait, so I understand this. So from your perspective, you also believe like the rapture of God's elect already happened as well, then, right?
the first resurrection, yeah. Okay,
Right. So
the
all
dead
the righteous were already taken away.
the dead in Christ who were in Tartarus at his resurrection, he took them up with him. So the first resurrection, yeah, they there's some people that have been resurrected already.
Okay, and you don't know where they're at, or they're like in a spiritual
Saints,
place or something.
and then they came back with Christ as saints, ruled for 1,000 years. And then if we're in Satan's little season, that means they're where are they? Where'd they go? I'm trying to figure that out. If he ruled, did the saints go back? Or are they coming back? Yeah, so this is a new thing for me. I've only been researching it for 2 years. I don't know why it gets so much heat, but You know,
I mean, I
I
can understand why, though. I mean, it doesn't make sense to believe that, like, the end time's already passed with, the way the world is today, man. Like, say, for instance, like, we're literally on the verge of nuclear weapons being used right now, right? Like, this is far worse than any of the events that we've seen in the past history with as far as like how close we come to using these weapons. You know what I'm saying? So the world is in chaos right now, right? Everything's in shambles. So by looking at the way everything is today, I think it's very reasonable to see why it would be a laughed upon thing to say that we're like after Christ's
yeah.
rule and Christ already came in the past. It doesn't seem like
So
a reasonable belief.
why? So explain to me again your understanding of Matthew 24:34, and explain to me.
I'll give you an answer again.
Explain to me. Explain
I
to
could
me.
answer two.
Okay, I'm not done. Let me talk. I want to put a
All
couple
right.
points in. It's just 2 points. Okay,
Yep.
so in Matthew 24:34, Jesus is talking to a generation. He's talking to those people then, and then also, where in the Revelations does it talk about building a third temple?
Okay. Well, as far as building the third temple, I didn't say that the Bible talked about building a third temple over in Israel. I didn't say that. It says that. As far as your question about Matthew 24, the answer I'll give you, I can answer two ways. Either Christ was talking about the generation in the future who would live to see these things. They would not pass away until they seen all those things be fulfilled. And then they also explain those people who were living back in Christ's day, they're alive on earth today through reincarnation. Like, say, for instance, a verse I'll give you on that is like the soldiers that pierced Christ's side when he was on the cross and, whipped him as he was, going up to be crucified. It says in Revelation 1:7 that he comes with clouds and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him. So, from our perspective, we believe those men are alive and they're going to see him come back,
So
see
then
the
you
one in the past life who they pierced.
you have to
Go
believe
ahead.
in reincarnation
Yeah, but that, like, say, for
for
instance,
that.
we believe in just give
But
me a second. Wait,
if you
bro,
believe, yeah,
just chill for a second. Like, we believe in reincarnation, but it's not, we didn't include that to explain those verses. We see it in
okay.
the Old Testament as well. So we don't include it to give you an answer for those
So
verses. We're
I can
saying in
explain
general it's in the Bible.
that verse very simply. That generation did see that. They weren't reincarnated. That generation who pierced him saw that. They saw it already.
Right. So
And
so
some
you
people
believe
are
they
asking,
seen Christ coming in
some
the
people,
clouds with his angels? They seen that too?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Even the first century, some of the secular recorded chariots of fires coming from heaven. That's been recorded by the very first fathers. Some of the what they call Orthodox Church they call fathers.
Well, I
Some of
mean,
them,
we're seeing weird stuff in the sky like every
and
other
then
night right now,
and
right?
and then yeah, okay, so that doesn't that's AI bots and stuff. You can
AI
do that.
bots. Well, what about the fact that caught one my cell phone camera? So is that an AI bot too?
Well, they're what are they, drones and orbs and shit?
They either call them UAPs or UFOs, white orbs, or
Yeah,
they
I
call them
never
tic
said
tacs,
don't.
right? Tic
I never
tacs.
said. I believe we are close to the end. Not
Close
to
to
the
the
end.
end.
Not close to the tribulation, but close to the second coming. The last, the saints are being surrounded. It's obvious that Christians are being surrounded by the world right now, and we're obviously Satan is deceiving all the nations. We have the Olympics. It says in Revelations 20, if you don't know, it says that the nations will be deceived during
Right.
Satan's little season. The nations will be deceived. I can see clearly that all the nations are being deceived. We have the Olympics; they're openly worshiping
Uh,
Satan.
Just so
We're
I
in Satan.
understand, so everything from Revelation 1 to 19 already happened. So we're in like 20 right now, correct? You'll see what I'm saying.
Some
'Cause-
people think we're in around the year 1,300 or something, and that they've
Well, who
added
who would you say? There's a reason why I was asking you that though, because I was curious to see
plenty.
like what would you
I
say?
offered you a historian. I could give you his name, famous historian.
I mean, I could take his name and look into what he says, sure, but I mean, I don't think that would correlate with the question which I was going to ask you.
Okay.
Right, because all just hear me out real quick. Like, what I was going to ask you is if you believe that everything from 1 to 19 has already been fulfilled. Well, I was going to ask you, what about Mystery Babylon? Like, where was that great city that got sacked and burned? Was that Jerusalem? Was it Rome? What would you say that was?
Jerusalem. Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon.
Okay, well, how would you break that down? Like, say, for instance, right, like half of the chapter in 18 that talks about the merchants of the earth that became rich off of trading merchandise with her. So, how could the merchants of the earth become rich off of trading with Jerusalem? It's not even located next to a sea.
It's not located next to what?
I mean, it's not close to it if you look it up on the world map.
Jerusalem.
Yeah,
Jerusalem does it. It's the it's right next to this. Well, the whole
not
country.
if you like. Yeah, I
There's
understand the country is, but not like the city of Jerusalem. It's not located next to the ocean, right?
well, Mystery Babylon. Jesus, the those people that the Pharisees and they brought the Babylonian cabal. You know, they learned Babylonian rituals and they brought it to Jerusalem. Is Jesus was just identifying Jerusalem as Babylon. That's already happened. It was destroyed. Yeah, Babylon. And yeah, Satan does have a modus operandi. He likes uh, the Roman Republic was Rome was a republic, but at first, and then it became a dictator like an emperor under Caesar. And Caesar, there was okay. So some people wanted to know what the abomination of desolation was that was in the temple. Well, some say that Caesar was in the temple. Caesar was also, history shows that he killed his wife, forced his son to dress up as his dead wife, and he dressed up as a invert. So it says something about the Antichrist didn't like women or something. So these are all pictures of Nero. Nero had it to where the Christians, if they did, so some people want to know what was the mark of the beast. Okay, so if you didn't
Well,
take the mark of
just
the
a
beast,
heads up on that, though. Just use the
Nero.
code language because YouTube doesn't like that word being used. So I would just call it like the MOTB or something like that.
Okay, okay. So
But let me
some
take
people
a
want
guess, though. You'd say it's the denarius coin, like the Roman currency. Is that what you'd say?
no. It was
Okay.
you got. I think you might have got a paper or something that showed that you bowed to Caesar as God. So you had to do that in order to buy or sell, and that's why Christians weren't allowed to buy or sell, and they were killed by Nero. They were, or I can say that, I don't know. They were executed, martyrs, because they wouldn't accept the mark of the beast, which was worshiping Nero as God, and then you received permission to buy and sell. But if you didn't, you were crucified. And that was the mark, or whatever you call it.
So, but like, say for instance, like you wouldn't say it would make more sense today because they literally have the technology to like implant your hand with like a computer chip. Like, say for instance, I know a guy who.
Yeah,
Just real quick, hear me out. I know a dude that I actually know myself who he has one of these chips in his hand. He can use it to like unlock the car, unlock the lock
yeah.
to his door. Buy certain things out of a vending machine, and so on and so forth. So, like, we
I
have
hear
the
you. I
technology to
believe it.
literally fulfill as the text says in, today's day and age.
I hear you. I hear you. I used to believe that too, but I also believe that Satan is on purposely creating like pre-tribulation events, like trying to fake the tribulation in order to, I don't know, just deceive everybody that you don't know what
But,
time you live.
but real quick though, you would agree that God deceives people, right? Like say for instance, Second Thessalonians 11:6, it says, "For the Lord, um, shall send them a strong delusion that they should believe a lie. I believe it's 2 Thessalonians 2:11. Excuse me.
Yeah. Also, some people believe that that's futuristic. That the
Or
maybe that aliens are the lie or whatever.
yeah, I know about that theory. They believe I know about it. So, like, from your perspective, so you believe like everything in the Old Testament has already happened then?
What do you mean? I'm specifically talking about Revelations. And
Right.
yes, some people do correlate. Like they'll say that they'll use like parts of the Old Testament, which will say that Babylon will be destroyed, and they say that that's futuristic. But no, that did happen. Babylon was destroyed.
Okay, but let me clarify real quick. Like, say for instance, like I quoted earlier, there are certain references in the Old Testament to like the day of the Lord. Like, say for instance, like Amos 5:18, it says the day of the Lord shall, be terrible. Like if a man leaned his hand on the wall and a serpent bit him, or ran from a lion and a bear met him. Right. So there's certain prophecies in the Old Testament about the day of the Lord, Isaiah 66, Isaiah 63. Um, um,
Yeah, yeah,
and going on there's other references in there we could
yeah.
get.
But
I was just
they,
curious though, so from your view all of that's already came to pass at some point, correct?
there's correlations. Yeah, there's Babylon always eventually becomes destroyed, and Babylon was destroyed during I think maybe Isaiah's time. I don't know. I really I know that Babylon rose a couple times, or rose once and fell, um, and then what else? There's a couple other like
Well, why do you
yeah,
think
but
about that? Like, what do you think about verse 4? Like it said, Revelation 18:4, it says, "Come up out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins." So like, what's your view on that if like his people were already taken away prior to the fall of that city?
come out of her, my people. But yeah, yeah, that happened in 70 A.D. when the temple was destroyed. Yeah, I believe that God is because Jerusalem rejected their Messiah. The Pharisees were following their Talmud, which came from Babylon, the mysteries of Babylon that followed. God divorced them in 70 A.D. He warned them to get out of Babylon, warned them to get out of Jerusalem, to flee Jerusalem, go to the mountains. One third of them escaped. Those were the ones that believed in Jesus. They were the church. They became the church. They fled as the remnant of Israel, who were the Israel Christians who fled Jerusalem, went and repopulated. And I don't know. They fled, went up north. They went this way. They went that way. They're all over white people. I don't know who they are. They fled, and yeah, that happened already. Yeah, I do believe that. Yeah,
I mean, it's an interesting view. Our belief on it, we believe that America's Mystery Babylon, and that's certainly, a future prophecy. That's our position on that. So that's where we might, come to a disagreement on that.
I used to believe that. Yeah, I used to believe America was Mystery Babylon.
But
You got
could I
Hollywood.
ask you though, right? Since you say you used to believe some of this stuff, right? Like used to believe some of this end time stuff. Like, I mean, like, what happened that would like convince you that like you're living after that? Like all those things already were fulfilled, that you're no longer in those days. Like, what happened exactly that
Like I
would
said,
change your mind on
about
that?
2 years ago, 2 years ago, I ran into the group that were studying it. It's a new thing that a lot of Christians are rereading Revelations and coming to the conclusion that Matthew 24:34, Jesus specifically said he's warning this generation. And so the futurists, they say that John wrote Revelations in 90 AD. So it couldn't be warning those people at that time. But we have more evidence now that he wrote it in probably around 64 AD, like right before, and he was warning that generation to flee because it was going to be surrounded by He called it Babylon. They
Well,
called it.
what's your thoughts about when the chapter says that the sun shall be black and the moon shall be turned to blood, and then the stars will fall to the earth? So, do you believe
Yeah,
like the stars literally fell to the earth back then, or like how would you explain that?
I believe stars are just angels. They're like living light beings. And I do believe it was recorded in the first century that did happen by first century secular scholars. Josephus, I think, recorded chariots of fire. So anyway, the this theory of dispensationalism of revelations being future is only about 250 years old. In my Geneva Bible, I never realized this before. There's a page right before it. It's called uh, the timeline of Revelations, and it shows going down there that the millennial reign is in there, the tribulation is in there. Tribulation was like 70 A.D. around that was part of the tribulation, and it shows the millennial reign, and then I think 1260 was a date in there. Some 1260 was a date, and they were partial preterists. The Geneva Bible was written, and the commentary in there was hidden. That's why one of the reasons why King James wanted his own. He didn't want no commentary, and so they hid that by. That's how they hid it. People used to believe this. I mean, the church used to believe this. It's a new doctrine that we're waiting for Jerusalem to be destroyed again. People knew that Jerusalem had been destroyed, and they knew the tribulation was over. That's why they put AD. It's after Christ. So they don't even know what time
I
sometime
mean,
after
well,
Christ. And then,
well, I mean, AD was used to like signify after his death, burial, and resurrection. That's what AD would be used to signify. Just as
yes,
BC would mean before his before he walked the
this
earth.
this generation shall not pass until you see all these things. 40
Hey,
years later,
I know you like that one, man. That's why you
40,
keep quoting it like 30
yeah,
times. But
yeah.
yo,
And
I
what's
just have a side note
30
for you real quick though.
30
Like
plus 40 is what? 30 plus 40 is what? 70. 30 plus 40, which is a generation. 40 years, you could call a generation, you know,
just a
the
side note,
generation.
like you as a partial preterist, like what are like a couple things you would say that haven't happened yet? Like because that would put the difference between you and a full preterist, right? Like so, like what are like a couple things
So
that
the
you would
second
say
judgment.
haven't happened yet?
So the second judgment hasn't happened. You know, Christ hasn't returned. And okay, it says in Revelations that Gog and Magog will surround the camp of the saints. We don't know where that is. Is that in the North Pole? Is that why Trump's buying up all the North? So we don't believe that God has come down and destroyed Gog and Magog with fire because they're surrounding the saints. Okay, so this is futuristic. And what else is in the future? Okay, also in the future is when the second judgment, the dead who are without Christ and will be raised again for the last judgment, the second death. That's futuristic. Now, full preterist, that's ridiculous. Like nobody is full preterist. Nobody believes that that's happened yet. That's why we don't even like to use the word preterist.
But could I ask
We're
you on that? You said nobody believes it has happened. Like, are you speaking for yourself? Because you can't
well,
be speaking for everybody because
there
there are
are
people
people
who say that.
there are people that do believe that, but this group that I'm with that doesn't believe that.
Is there like a name of the group you're with, or is it just a couple people online?
Well, it's YouTube. There's some people in there, like you could put in understanding conspiracy. He has a good channel. He started out as a conspiracy theorist and then became a Christian, and he found out about. So he has a channel called Understanding Conspiracy. There's a channel called JT underscore follows underscore JC. His name is John, and John or JT follows JC. That's one channel. And they brought up a historian named Hunter. So you could look at one of the they found a video of a historian and an I don't know. They study the ground and I don't know what they call it. Archaeologist type
Right.
historian, and found out that the first century and ninth century are all in history have been all put into spread out. So the first century has been spread out over 900 years, up to 900 years, maybe even 1,000. Some people say 700, some people say, but they added history to our timeline in order to hide the millennial reign. And he's not even a Christian. He's not a Christian. He just says that somewhere somebody has added time to our timeline. That's where the lie in history comes from. And
I mean,
so
I could
yeah.
agree that something's added on, but couldn't that just be like, say, for instance, they say that humans existed for 300,000 years. Like, couldn't that just be the added time? Like, does it have to be recently within the
No,
last, say, 2,000
it's a
years?
he was studying a Pacific time. He was studying the Roman Empire in the first century and how it fell and everything. And it's showing that the first century, fifth century, and seventh century are all the first century. That there's no ground. The levels are the if you dig in the ground, there's no one building on top of Rome. No, there's no. It's Rome was. In other words, they spread the first century out over longer than it was. It was, it was the first centuries. He shows that disasters, there were three major disasters that they said were, one was in the first century, one disaster was in the fifth century, and another disaster was in the seventh century. But he has discovered that they were all three in the same century, the first century. The archaeology, it shows by studying the layers of the ground that it was all during the first century, and that
Well, let me
they
ask you something on this though, real quick. Like, I'm sure you're aware that we have like all these Roman buildings around today, such as the Pantheon, the Colosseum, and so on and so forth, and the aqueducts. But the question I got for you is like, why is that stuff still standing if Christ came back and crushed those nations in history? Like, why
okay.
is
This is a
Rome? Like, you can
theory
still go to Rome today, and it's not like all
on
burned and
yeah,
just powder. You can literally go there and see like buildings that were constructed two
yeah,
thousand years ago.
yeah, yeah. I know that's part of the theory. Okay, so Rome was worldwide. In we have Roman structures in Japan. We have them in South America, North America. Roman structures all over the world. And during the tribulation, there was a great earthquake, which had never happened before. The volcanoes going off, and a lot of these buildings were buried, like in a mud flood. During a great earthquake, there's movement in the earth acts like almost like mud, and things will sink and things will get buried and mud slides and everything.
What about
So
tsunamis?
I don't know if there were tsunamis. Yeah, that could have been too. But it says that the tribulation is something that's the worst that will ever happen again. That there was a great earthquake, pestilence, and this
Right,
is
but you're
all
saying
recorded. This is
so
all
you're saying
recorded in
these
the first
buildings
century.
survived that great terribleness though, right?
Rome built great structures out of rock, and you know, big, huge, monolithic structures, and built very well. Their concrete's way better than our concrete. It's a
But what
different type of
about like
concrete.
the aqueducts? Like when the earthquakes knock those down? Because those are nice and thin.
No,
They're not like the Colosseum as far as their
the
composition
Bible,
and how they're
the Bible,
structured.
the Bible talks about like a great earthquake. There's different
Yep.
things that destroy parts of the earth. The sea. There's great tribulation is described as an earthquake, pestilence, wars. Like Rome, there's so. What I'm saying is this all is recorded in history in the ground, and it all happened during the first century. Volcanoes went off. When there's no recorded history of volcanoes before 70 AD, like the Pompous, that volcano that right after Rome.
You're talking about
destroyed
Pompeii, 79 AD.
Pompeii. Yeah, yeah. There's no recorded history of volcanoes before um, like 70 AD, 79 AD, or whenever. All those, this historian said, went off at the same time, and all the earthquake went off. All this the half. There was a part of the world, like was at war, and like 1/3. I mean, like there was a great slaughter of people that happened, and he's saying that this all happened during the first century, but for some the current historians are hiding the millennial reign, and they're saying that it happened over 900 years period of time when it actually all happened at once. And you can tell because they say that these three different catastrophes, they're divided like right on a line. Like this happened in this part of the world, and then on this part of the world, like right on a line, this part of the world, this catastrophe happened, and then right on the line, this part of the world, this catastrophe happened. But catastrophes don't happen like on a line. Catastrophes don't happen like it was all one big catastrophe. They divided it up into.
What's your no, well, I'll let you finish, but then I wanted to ask you a question, but I'll let you finish.
That's okay. That I'm just trying to explain how they hid or they added the history, the timeline, how the timeline. I'm showing you. I had the Geneva Bible for like 30 years, or about 30 years, and I never read the first, the introduction page to Revelations, the commentary about the timeline, until someone told me, and I went to and there it is. They show that the millennial reign is over, that we're living in after the millennial reign.
Okay, real
And
quick, what's your thoughts on Revelation chapter 11, verse 15? It says that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, Christ is still controls history. He's the ultimate one in charge of history. This is all. This was all planned out. Jesus did rule. He is the King of Kings. And I'm saying during the millennial reign, there were still kingdoms, and they were under Christ's rule. And the Bible says that after the millennial reign, there'll be a short season. Now, some people don't know what a short season is. A little season. What is a season? It's about a quarter of 1,000 years, maybe. It's shorter than 1,000 years.
Well,
It's a
real quick,
season.
do you know how many countries exist on Earth today?
Hmm, I don't know
There's
what,
a
100.
All right. There's 195 countries, but the reason I bring it up is going back to the verse that says that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So wouldn't that also mean that the kingdoms of earth today, which would include some of those from ancient times, like Rome's still around, like the landmass is not a significant power like it was, but it's still around technically. So
All right.
all the kingdom wait, just let me finish real quick. So like all the nations on earth, all 195, wouldn't they all be under Christ's domain right now, since it says he's going to reign over the nations forever and ever?
Okay. You want to read that verse again?
Yeah, it's Revelation. Well, I can't pull it up on screen on my end because it will kick me off the stream. So
Yeah,
if
I'll
you got
check
it,
it
you're
out.
welcome to read it.
Revelations,
11 verse 15.
Revelations 11.
Yo, what's up, DJ Spin? Glad to see you here, man. Long time no see.
15. Mm, come on. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Yeah, Christ still reigns. I mean, I don't deny that. But do you deny that Revelations 20? Um, do you deny Revelations 20 states that there will be a short season?
I don't deny that, but I don't believe that that's happening right now. I believe that's future tense. But the reason I'm bringing this up is it doesn't seem consistent with your claim because how can Christ be ruling over the nations right now? If, like, say, for instance, you heard my rant at the beginning of the stream, I was talking about how all these nations are doing, these wicked things and following these practices that are against what Christ stands for. So, if Christ was in power over these nations today and they're in obedience, why are they promoting all of these things that he considers to be sin and displeasing to his Father?
Well, I'd have to answer that by asking you a question. Okay,
Sure.
so let's say the revelations is not happened yet, and Christ does come back and reign over the nations. But how long does he reign for? Does he not say also that after the millennial reign, that it says in Revelation, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and he shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them
Right.
to battle. Okay, that's still futuristic, right?
Yes.
So where is Christ reigning still? Because is he reigning as the King of Kings during this period?
I would
Revelation.
say he is, yes, because in our position, we believe the kingdom of heaven is going to be on the physical earth, right? So he's still ruling, but then Satan's going to be let loose to gather the nations according to it. Which is, I'll say this: there are different fields of faults on this verse. Like, say, for instance, uh, some of um some of us, we don't believe that Revelation is written in chronological order. Like sometimes, say for instance, something in chapter 3 could happen before chapter 6, just as an example, right? So some believe that Revelation 20 was actually, ironically enough, talking about the Middle Ages. So it would
Yeah,
depend as
but
far as
if
the
you go,
interpretation, but it was
yeah,
definitely
but
an interesting chapter. I can say
yeah,
that.
but if you go from verse 9, where it says, and they went up to from the breast of the earth and encompassed the camp of the saints about and the
Right.
beloved city, and fire came down from heaven out of heaven and devoured them. That's future. And then
Yeah.
the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. So that has to be futuristic, and you can't
Sure.
say that Revelations 8 is, like, not in chronological order. It's the end of Revelations. It's telling you the end. It's telling you when eternity starts. The world's going to be destroyed eventually,
Where does it
and
say the world's going to get destroyed? Because as far as
well,
I know, it says in
not
Ecclesiastes,
destroyed.
the world
Not,
endures
not,
forever.
I just meant the wicked, the world system's going to be destroyed by fire when it surrounds
Right.
the camp. It's still the earth isn't going to be destroyed because the kingdom of heaven is going to be on earth, I believe, and
Right.
and
Oh, no,
then
that seems like a difference you have with a food preterist, though. Like, say, for instance, I ask them about it, and they'll tell me that the kingdom of heaven is like not literal, like it's a figurative thing. But it sounds like from your position, you believe that it's a literal thing that will actually exist, like
yeah,
an actual city. So that would be a difference between
yeah,
the two of you, I guess.
that's true, and this is one of the reasons why um, I okay. So Revelations 9 is very interesting because it says that Gog will surround and go to battle, number who is as the sands of the sea. That sounds like almost the whole world. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and encompassed, which means encircled, the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and the beloved city. So they encompass the saints and the beloved city. So the saints would be those who Christ came during maybe they went. You can't go to the North Pole. You're not allowed to go up there. Some people think that maybe Christ rules from Mount Ebru or some. You know, God is called the King of the. God is the King of the North. The true King of the North is God. I mean, so Jesus was taken up when Satan ruled the. When Jesus first came and Satan took him up to a high mountain and showed him the whole world.
Talk about Matthew, the fourth chapter.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
But he was being tempted by the devil, and the devil showed him the whole world. Now, some people believe that at that time, Satan, was in charge of the world, and he took him, to Mount Neeb. I forget the name of it. It's in the North Pole, and we're not allowed to go there.
Okay.
So the theory is that maybe some people believe that the camp of the saints, after after the millennial reign, maybe it was always the North Pole, and you could go there. Maybe that's there's four rivers that lead to the North Pole on old maps, like four entrances to and it's no, now they say there is no landmass there, that it's just ice. So yeah, there's a lot of deception going on, but yeah.
Right.
So the
I understand what you're saying.
so in the end times, when right before eternity, the camp of the saints will be encircled by Gog and Magog, and then fire comes down from heaven and destroys and devours all of them. Now, if you believe that, if you saw, like, New Jerusalem is described as being 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles. Now, that's only two geometrical shapes it could be. That it could be a pyramid or a cube. So if the world saw New Jerusalem coming, would they think it was an alien mothership, or would they?
They
What would they?
probably would. They probably would think that it's just some type of ship from somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if people out here seeing that.
Now just imagine. Now just imagine if that was the grand delusion that people were. Okay,
I mean,
so this.
that's an interesting point that you say. Like, say for instance, like maybe you're saying they could use like Project Bluebeam to make something like that appear in the sky. It's an interesting point, but there seems to be a dilemma with that because people would say, well, wait, well, anybody that studied in the Bible would know that the kingdom of heaven doesn't come down until the end after Christ already returns and battle Armageddon, all that stuff takes place. So a person who's skilled in the Bible would know that that doesn't seem right. Like, say, for instance, like Christ, when he gave the warnings about the end, he said, don't believe him if they tell you that he's in the desert or in the secret chambers or, this here or there. Don't believe him when they tell you that because as
Yeah,
the, lightning shines to the east and to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Right. So he
yeah,
said, look out for, certain similar warnings that, and stuff like that.
right. And then that leads into there's scriptures that says that those who do not come up to uh, to worship during the millennial reign, that if you did not come to the King of Kings and give some kind
They
of, I
won't get
forget
like
what.
rain for their crops or something like that. Is that you're
Yeah,
referring to?
it wouldn't rain. They wouldn't get rain for, and so where are all the deserts in Saudi Arabia? Where these people, why do they don't get rain? Because their nation
Well,
was didn't.
I wouldn't say that. Like, it's not just talk about desert areas. Like, say for instance, like where I'm at, we didn't get rain over here for literally 2 months, right? That's like say 8.5 weeks we didn't get rain over here, right? So crops were out here, dying. Farmers had to go out there and just by hand, give the water, like water them. They couldn't rely on the rain coming down for 2 months. So it's not
Yeah,
only desert areas that would be affected by that. But yeah, our view, we believe that's going to happen in the kingdom of heaven. So that would be another point of disagreement. We believe that the other nations are going to be on the earth when Christ rules, but they're going to be under obedience. They're going to have to follow what he says. And if they don't, there's going to be certain guidelines that, they're going to be punished if they don't abide by, such as if they don't, come up to serve the Lord and Amish,
yeah.
give a reference to him, for lack of better terms, it won't rain for their crops, just as one
Yes,
punishment that could happen to them.
that's what I'm saying has already happened. That's
Yeah,
why.
that'd be where we would disagree. I certainly wouldn't agree on that. By that line of logic, though, I believe that's Isaiah the 19th chapter, if I'm not mistaken. But with that line of logic, if you're going to say that already happened, so wouldn't you have to say Isaiah 60 already happened?
I don't know what that is.
Well, Isaiah 60, it gives like the breakdown of like the building up of the kingdom. Right. So I'm saying, like, if it's going to be consistent with what you're saying, if Isaiah 19 happened with the rain and the crops, well, wouldn't you say Isaiah 60 already came to pass then sometime in history? Like, why would one happen and the
Isaiah
other one not?
Isaiah has talks about um, the great and terrible day of the Lord for the Jewish nation, and it also talks about the great and terrible the end days, the very end days. So there are different times he's talking about in Isaiah. He talks about like the end of the nations of Israel's um, what did we
Like,
call it?
say, for instance, in Isaiah 60, I'll just give you a couple references. Like, it says that the kings of the other nations are going to bring their riches to the gates of the kingdom. It says the servants of the sons of the other nations are going to build up thy walls. Your children are going to be brought in the arms of kings. And it says, a nation and kingdom that will not serve thee, they shall utterly perish by the sword. So I'm just curious, like, when would you say that's happened in history then?
Yeah, that happened during the millennial reign.
Like, is there like a certain century you could point towards that, or?
Well, that's what all they call the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, where everything was like chivalry. It was about honor, respect, and chivalry, and like they called it Christendom. Christendom has already that's passed, yeah, and God ruled with the iron rod. And if your nation didn't go by certain preset things, he ruled with an iron rod. I mean, most people, because he ruled with the iron rod, went along and did, stayed out of trouble. It was a glorious time. They they built great cathedrals to glorify God. They say that were built, these structures right after Rome was destroyed. Then they started building the domes a little bit different. They were more pointed. They were a spiral, and they had and it had some kind of could collect frequencies from the air. It was high tech. They had these things that
Could you give
collect.
me real quick? Could you
Yeah,
give me a breakdown of Isaiah 60 and verse 21, if you want to pull that up on your end?
Isaiah.
And nearly paraphrasing for the audience, it says that his people are going to inherit the land forever as their inheritance. Nearly paraphrasing the verse, but he'll read it. But when he reads that, I'm just curious to see, like, when he would he say this has happened, because it says they'd inherit the land forever as an inheritance.
Okay, hold on. Isaiah.
Yep, it's
Well,
Isaiah 60 and verse 21.
Isaiah. Okay. So, 21. Let me get okay. Okay. That's after that's that I think that's talking about after Revelations 20. Thy sun shall no longer go down, neither shall the moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. Thy people also shall all be righteous. They shall inherit the land for that's like in eternity. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. This is a
Right, and
little one.
that's my position. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying Isaiah 60 is in the kingdom, but I'm asking you because you said earlier that this was like in history at some point. That's why I
No,
brought this up.
no, I just said that Isaiah um, has prophecies of future history events, like future, uh, like during the millennial, he has prophecies about that time. He obviously in this verse has prophecies about the end of days, the very end of days and eternity, where the
What's your thoughts
people,
on verse 14, if you don't mind me asking,
verse 14.
in the same
That's,
chapter?
okay. Yeah, that could be maybe before the wicked are destroyed.
If you don't mind, could you read it for the audience, though, so they know what we're referring to?
The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel.
Right. So my position is this whole chapter is talking about the kingdom of heaven. There's so many correlations between this chapter and like Revelation, the 21st chapter. There's so many correlations you can make between the two of them, as you pointed out down at near the end of the chapter. But again, I'm just asking you because earlier on when I brought up Isaiah 60, you were telling me that it happened during like the millennia reign, like maybe a couple
No,
centuries ago or something, right?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I might have misspoken. All I was referring to is the whole book of Isaiah. And I didn't look up 60 before you told me. I just going off memory, and I don't have
No,
a good
that's
memory.
all cool. There's no problem. But would you then agree then that there are prophecies in the Old Testament that have not came to pass then, as of
Oh
today?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
but
because
because
other full preterists, well, I'll say full preterist because you're a partial preterist, but the full preterists they talk to, they tell me, well, everything's fulfilled in there, right? Everything in the Old Testament and everything in the New Testament, which is, it's such a bizarre view to have, but I mean, it's like they can't answer like Isaiah 60. All they can do is just say, it's all metaphoric, it's all, not literal. It's just really bizarre to me.
yeah, I can't understand full preterist either. I
Another
can't.
thing that you guys seem to be in a disagreement on between the partial and the full preterist is it seems like you guys accept when it talks about like the fire, like say for instance, like like Isaiah 66, right? The Lord will come with fire with his chariots and bring judgment upon the people. They're paraphrasing. Um, but they would tell me that the fire is just like apocalyptic language, like it's not literal. But it sounds like you guys are saying that it is like literal fire.
Yeah, there are first century historians, secular, and um, some people call them Orthodox. Just I call them just elders of the church who recorded chariots of fire coming down around this around 70. I don't know exactly the year AD that happened, and
I
that
mean,
might have
but there's
been.
other accounts that, like, say for instance, like I don't know if you accept Enoch, but in there they talk about these, which I don't accept Enoch, but I know there's people listening who do. And say for instance, I believe it's in Maccabees. There's another account about the fiery chariots in the skies. I think it's all throughout the Bible, right? So I wouldn't just say that it happened in 70 A.D. As like the coming of Christ or something like that, because it happens all throughout the Bible. Hell, like even in the Exodus story, right? What happened? It says that pillars of fire. There were pillars of cloud by day and pillars of fire by night for the Israelites, right? So we'd say those were like, um, we call them UFOs, right? Or UAPs is what we call them today. But again, it's the um, same language being used, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with God uses like a standing operator procedure when he wants to destroy. It says that God is a consuming fire that comes down. He's a consuming fire. I mean, and the wicked perish, but the righteous, they can live in the consuming fire. Like Sheedmack, Mishrak, and Godiak, or whatever the names
You're talking about Shirach, Meshach, and Abednego from Daniel
were.
3.
Yeah, the consuming fire didn't consume them. They're protected for. So when the consuming fire comes down in Revelations 20 and surrounds the saints, it destroys the wicked. It doesn't destroy the saints because we're not. And so yeah, he uses consuming fires, but also what I'm saying is, first century elders of the church recorded some kind of. They called it chariots of fire. They saw chariots of fire coming down. Now, was that the saints coming down to destroy Rome, or was that what that was about? Did that already happen? Well, some people said that they recorded that the stars fell from heaven. They called them chariots of fire, and that all that already happened. Yeah, and I believe it's also going to happen again. God's going to use fire to come down and surround. In Revelation 20, it says it comes down like fire and destroys the wicked. You know.
Well, what for this like third coming you're talking about? Like, is there any signs to look out for that, or like how do you know when it's going to happen? Is it like is he going to come back at like any random day within this the end of the millennia, or like how's that going to happen?
Well, the end of Satan's little season is described in Revelations. I believe that right now Satan is deceiving all the nations with this false narrative that the tribulation is futuristic, and so Satan may be counterfeiting pre-tribulation events. Like that's the whole thing. He wants to hide what, you might say, why would he do that? I mean, the first thing you would do, I mean, it says in the Bible also that he thinks to change times and seasons and stuff.
Right.
This is new to me. I'm only like 2 years. I heard of it about 7 years ago, and I didn't really, want to look into it because I thought, this is stupid. But then I looked into it, and there's people that have been studying this for 20 years, 30 years. And then there's people that have been studying it for just a few years. And some of the people that have been studying it for just a few years, they're more, when they read Matthew's 24:34, it says that all these things will happen to this generation. They're more believing, they like to believe what Jesus said, that, if Jesus is going to warn that generation, if that's exactly what he said, this generation, and he didn't add anything like, like he's talking about, a future generation, wouldn't he
Could
have
I
said,
ask you on that? When Christ, well, going by what you're saying, right, with Christ returning supposedly in like the first century, like did the whole world see him at that point, or was it like only that region? Because the Bible says that Jesus said that every
no,
eye is going to see him.
the whole world saw it.
How did the whole world see him?
Yeah.
Like, say for instance, like the Indians living in the Americas or the Vikings or whoever was over here at that time in history, how did they see Christ if he
Well,
was
see, that's
over in Israel?
one of the things. This gets into the mud flood theory that, and then the Great Tribulation. There was a great earthquake, which has never happened before. Maybe the Earth was, Rome. It says in Revelations that John said that, or I think who it was, Paul or John, in one of the Gospels, I don't remember, that said that all the world had been already given the gospel, that it had spread throughout the world. And so Rome was more, it was larger. If the capital of DC, Washington, D.C., that great Roman, all those Roman structures, if that was Rome, then the native Indians would have also been a part of the gospel, had already been spread throughout the whole world. And it says in Revelations also, I think the last chapter says, it tells, do not seal up this book because the time is at hand. It says that it's a do not seal. Like Daniel was told to seal it up because it was 490 years in the future. He said, seal this book up for the time is not at hand. Revelation specifically says, do not seal this book up because the time is at hand.
Could you give me your understanding about 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 10 to 13? Like explain it in your theology, like when did this happen and like how did this happen?
Okay, let me look that up. 2 Peter.
Yeah, chapter 3 verse 10 down to 13.
Okay. Let's see what it says. Give me some more Bible Hub. Oh. What the hell? Why doesn't it want to show me this? Mess with me. Okay, here it is. They always want to give me it in the New International Version, but most people like to hear it in the King James Version. King James says, see, what does it say? But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with great noise, and settlements shall melt in the sun. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person ought ye to be in holy conversation and godliness, looking for the hastening of one unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to this promise, look for new heaven and a new earth within dwell righteousness. Okay, well, that sounds like the very end. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens. Well, the day of the Lord, some people think that that's referring to the great tribulation and the day of the Lord. And some people think that's the very end. Like, nevertheless, we, according to this promise, look for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwell righteousness. A new heaven and a new earth. Yeah. Well, that's hard to tell whether he's talking about when the millennial reign or the very end of time where the New
Like a
Jerusalem.
question I was going to ask on the verse, right? Because most preterists I talk to would tell me that's like 70 AD, right? With like the sack of Jerusalem or whatever. But the question I'd have with that, and hell, it doesn't even have to be 70 AD. We could say any war in history, like say the First or Second World War, the Vietnam War, or the Roman Jewish wars, whatever war you want to say. This wouldn't be fulfilled with any of them. Notice how it says the elements, right? Meaning the sky above our head, it says it would melt with fervent heat, right? So, like, when in history has that happened then? Like, would you agree that this is clearly future tense?
Yeah, that looks like it's future.
Okay, but then the next point to focus on, though, is keep in mind that it keeps talking about looking for and hastening unto the day of the Lord. Like, let's focus on that word day. It doesn't say days, which would mean plural, more than one. It says day, meaning one singular day. So from our perspective, we believe Christ is coming back one time, right? It's just going to be one day when he returns, and then he's on the earth, and he's ruling, and all nations are put down. And that this is going to happen at the end of the Great Tribulation, as we went over earlier. That's our position. But from your position, you believe there's like basically what, multiple days of the Lord? Like he came one point, and then he's going to come back again.
Well, the day of the Lord for the Jews was their destruction. And then the day of the Lord for all of humanity, the very end day is the final judgment. Now,
But where does it make the
you,
distinction between the two, though? Like, where does it say there's a day of the Lord for the Jewish people, but then another one for like all the other nations?
Well, the Bible, if you're saying that the tribulation happens, that's the day of the Lord,
I'll refresh you.
or the
I mentioned earlier,
or the day,
like
or
say for
after
instance, yeah, I'll
after the.
answer the question real quick. Matthew 24, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, will the Son of Man be revealed, and then he'll send his angels to gather together his elect. So we believe at the very end of the Great Tribulation, Christ is going to come back, and then he's going to send his angels to gather together his elect. And then after that, he's going to go around the world and conquer the nations. That's our view on it.
Yeah, I believe that already happened.
Right, I understand you believe that already happened, but you asked me what was my belief like as far as him coming back, maybe in the middle of the
Well, so
trib or
do you,
after the trib or whatever. That was what you were asking me.
yeah, but I'm just trying to understand. You believe that Jesus is going to come back.
Right.
He's going to reign with his saints by the
Yeah.
sword for 1,000 years, overcome the kingdoms.
Right.
Then, so where does Satan's little season fit in?
Well,
Where's that at?
let's
Is he?
say this, right? Let's say this, which I can say it's definitely a lot of different views on this, but let's say this though. Um, he reigns for 1,000 years. Then let's say Satan comes up with this rebellion, then he gets squashed, and then we enter eternity. Like it could easily go down that way, right? Like I don't think it's a significant point, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that. It says that God rules with 1,000 years, and then Satan is loosed and deceives the world, and then Gog and Magog, and then fire comes down, and then a new heaven and a new earth.
Okay, but real quick, when it says new heaven and new earth, like my perspective, I don't believe that literally means that he's going to destroy this world and reconstruct the world, like literally, because sometimes the word, world when it's used has different meanings. Like say for instance, if you read Second Ezra chapter 6 verse 9, it says, "For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows." So that's an example where it says the end of the world, but it doesn't literally mean the world's going to explode. It just means a transfer of power from one
Yeah,
people to the other people. So when it
I
talks
can
about a
agree
new
with
heaven and new earth, we just say it means like a new power over the earth has taken over. It doesn't literally mean the world's going to like burn up and disappear and be rebuilt. That wouldn't be our view on it.
Yeah, I agree. It's that it's the Bible uses a lot of um, apocalyptic kind of speech, like to, but all I'm questioning is if you think that the millennial reign brings in the new heaven and the new earth. Do you think you're saying that the 1,000 years brings it in, but there's no Satan's little season like it says in Revelations 20, that's just that doesn't happen, that the new heaven and the earth
Well,
occurs during the millennial reign, but it's not after Satan's little season.
I'll explain this, right? There's a lot of schools of thought on this, the Revelation 20. As I explained earlier, we don't believe that Revelation is in chronological order, right? Some events could happen before others. So there's a school of thought that the little season with Satan being loosed, that's basically happening. But the millennia reign, as far as Christ coming and reigning, we believe that he's just going to come one time and reign forever. But I'm saying to appease what you're saying, even if we were to say that Satan, has this rebellion in this little season, even if that happened after Christ was ruling, it could just easily be squashed and, done away with.
Yeah,
So I don't think it's like a significant, point to like, build a whole doctrine around, that one point, if you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
And I'll give you another example. Like, we believe that Satan could be referred to as, people could be referred to as Satan. Like, you might be familiar where Christ called Peter Satan, right? He said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," right? Or
mhm,
the king of Babylon is referred to as Lucifer if you read Isaiah, the 14th chapter, right? So sometimes people can be referred to as the devil or Satan or Lucifer. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, some people are, get behind me, Satan. Yeah, he said that.
Right. What about Isaiah 14? You're familiar with that chapter, right?
I don't have, um, I I study the scriptures, but I don't remember addresses a lot. Like what's
Yeah, I mean that's cool. I mean, if you're not familiar with it, I mean, I won't press you on here. I mean, you can check it out in your free time, and if we talk again, maybe we could bring that up another time. But in your free time, look over that because a lot of people try to bring that verse up and to try to say that at the beginning there was like a fall, where Satan rebelled against God and all that, which I used to believe that, right? But after rereading the Bible for myself a couple of times, I've found flaws with that, theology and viewpoint. So I don't believe that, Satan is in opposition to God. According to the Bible, it seems like Satan and demons, they have to obey God, right, and do as He says. Like we see that in Matthew 5 or Job the second chapter, right? God gives the man and guidelines, and they go and follow what He says. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
our view on it.
That's why you can still. That's why I can still believe that Satan is loosed for a short period of time to deceive the nations, but yet Christ is still in charge of history. It doesn't mean
Well,
that it's
the,
just that he
okay.
still reigns. He still reigns. He's reigned ever since he was resurrected. He was
And he's
set
reigning
up.
right now, right?
Yeah, he's reigning right now on the throne wherever he's at, but
But what does
he's
that
allowed.
mean? Like what does it mean by reign, though? Like, how do
Uh,
you reign over a nation? How does a king reign over a nation? What doesn't he put
Jesus
up edicts
controls,
for them to follow?
Jesus controls history, right? Is he
Yeah.
not in charge of history?
I mean, I guess he gives prophecies about things. So sure, I'll say yeah.
Well, he still controls history, and he said that Satan would be loosed for a short season, and that I don't believe that's history yet. That I believe we're in that history. Yeah,
Right, I
it's not.
understand what you're saying, but I'm just asking you, like you said, Christ is currently ruling, but I'm like asking how can you define that? Because say for instance, when I look at the world and the guidelines and ways that nations are running things, it seems to be in complete opposition to what Christ said. Like I'll give you an example, right? Like rainbow marriage, I got to use coded language, but man and man, woman and woman marriage. Most of the nations in the world they accept that. In fact, they say you can change your gender. There's like five different genders. They got all these restaurants set up for you to eat unlawful foods. People go to work with shaven faces. All of those things go against Christ's standard. So I mean, it's like I don't understand how you could say that Christ is ruling the nations if the nations, their regulations and how they operate themselves doesn't comply with what Christ says and what his moral standard is.
I'm saying that Christ ruled the nations with a sword with an iron rod or a sword, and that is history. That just like Jesus said, that Jesus was tempted by Satan. Uh, I will give you all these nations. He said, Satan is in charge of the world system, but yet we know Christ still is in charge of history. I mean, Jesus knew Satan was going to tempt him. I mean, God knew that this history, this is a part of history. God
Right,
allowed
I
Satan.
understand what you're saying about like the history part. I understand what you're saying, but the part I'm asking you about, like you said that he's currently ruling still today, but I'm saying we don't see that though. Like in day-to-day life, we don't
Was
see that
Christ
because the nations are in disobedience to Christ, not in obedience to
when
him.
Satan tempted Jesus on the mountain, said, I will give you all these nations if you bow to me. Was Satan in charge, or was Jesus still in charge of history? Did not was, even though Satan was going to give him all the nations of the world, was not Christ really still in charge of history? I mean,
Well, I'd say
he,
his father. I say his father was in charge, not Christ. So
yeah,
say for instance, Christ said
God,
that of that day
God.
and that hour he doesn't know. Like that day he would return, he said that he didn't know that, but only the Father in heaven knew. Right? So we see there's some things that Christ, when he was down here physically on the earth the first time, there were some things that he said he didn't know, such as the day he would return again. He said the Father knew, but he didn't know that. Right?
Mhm.
So, but I can agree that Satan, when he tempted Christ, Christ was more powerful than him. But God sent him to, tempt Christ, right, to see if he would do it. But Christ
Yeah,
already knew what had to be done, so he
that
did
was
not comply with that.
because that was a part of the plan of history. God
Right, I
controlled
understand.
history. He knew that uh, God had Jesus had to be tempted by the devil. It was part of history. It was
Yeah,
fulfilled.
I'll add something to what you're saying.
Like
Like, if you read Matthew 26, right, when Christ was in the garden, he knew it was going to happen, that he was going to be captured, and they were going to crucify him. That's why he said, if it's the Father's will, let this pass from him. But if the Father wants him to go through it, he will. So he already knew that was going to happen, right? He knew that that was his whole journey for why he even came down to the earth, was to, live, teach, and then, have to die for forgiveness of sins, right? So yeah, he knew that was his purpose for why he came down.
And then after the cross, he was given all authority. He sat down on the throne room of God. He was given all authority, and that was written as prophecy that he would do that. He did it. It's also prophesied that Satan will be released for a short period of time. And
But could I
does
ask
that
you on that though? Because
mean what I'm trying to ask
Revelation
is,
20.
does that
Yep.
mean that Jesus is still not in, that just because God allows this history to happen, does that mean that he's not in charge anymore?
Well, I'll,
That
I'll
he
say
doesn't
it this way, right? The Bible says that Christ is sitting on the right hand of his Father until the day that he gives the go ahead to make the enemies his footstool. Right. That's what I believe. That's in Psalms 110, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's our view on it. We believe that Christ is sitting on the right hand of his Father, and he's waiting for him to give him the go ahead. Like, say, for instance, I'll give you an example. Like, if you read, I believe that's Revelation, the 15th chapter, right? Christ is sitting there waiting for the time to thrust the sickle into the earth and to reap the earth. But it wasn't time just yet, right? But then later on, he was given the go ahead to go ahead and bring that to pass, which, of course, in my view, I don't believe that's happened yet, right? I believe that's future tense, but in the text, it's saying that he's sitting there waiting for that time. So it's not happening right now or tomorrow or last week, but soon he's going to be given that go ahead for to go ahead and go do that to the earth, right, to bring these things upon the earth. But
Yeah, that's
that's
what.
our view on it.
Yeah, I differ. I believe that. Uh,
Well, I know you differ because you believe it happened, in like the first century. So I already know that.
yeah, he said this generation will not pass before all these things will
But I
happen.
was gonna ask you, like, I don't know why, but like you brought up
40 years.
about Satan's little season like 30 times in this discussion. Is there a certain reason why you focus on just that chapter, though?
I didn't just focus on that chapter,
Well,
man.
let me phrase myself. You brought up other verses, but I'm saying you quote back to this one like 30 times in this 2 hour discussion.
Yeah. So let's go to, okay, let's see. Let's go to a different chapter. Okay, Revelations.
Yeah, like say for instance, which I only got like a couple more minutes left. I mean, we could probably go maybe 10, 15 more minutes. But I mean, if you have like another point you want to bring up on the topic, you're welcome to bring it up now.
Oh, that's okay. I just came up. I don't know why I came up in the first place, except
I
maybe to
mean,
share the.
I think it was a reasonable conversation. I mean, we started on off on rough terrain, I guess we could say. But I mean, I think it was a reasonable conversation. You were friendly and polite up here, much more than the other preterist I talked to. So even though we disagree, I will give you credit for that.
Okay, thanks. I'm not trying to, I don't, I believe as long as uh, that you're
Yeah,
in
I get what you're
Christ.
saying. It's good to to have these interactions with people of other views, so you can listen and learn to, other perspectives on these subjects.
Yeah. And so let's look at another verse. It says, Revelations 22:10. Then he told me, do not seal up the words of this prophecy because the time is near. Now, if this was written in 66 AD and it's 2,000 years later, would that be, uh, is it unsealed now? Or was it unsealed to those people back then to warn them to flee Jerusalem?
Well, 2 points I'll make up here. Say for instance in Daniel 12, I believe it's 12:13, but the angel told Daniel to go his way until the time at the end, and then in the end times the book would be open and knowledge would be increased, right? So I believe now within our lifetime the book's being open and knowledge is being increased. But also one point I want to make from your perspective, you told me earlier that like the kingdom of heaven, and that you believe that's future prophecy. So just from your perspective, you went to a chapter that you said is in the future. So like how would you explain that? Because you believe that Revelation 21 and 22 about the kingdom is future context. So wouldn't you even agree from your perspective that that part is in the future compared to what you told me earlier when it said like a little season or like short time or whatever you just read?
Well, the ultimate eternity is in the future. The final new heaven and new earth, yeah, is in the future. But yeah,
Right. So I'm saying, but like, why would you ask me about that? Like, trying to make me say like it's, relatively soon to like when it was written. But even from your perspective, you agree that the chapter hasn't happened yet. So like, I would saying like, wouldn't you agree with me at least in this chapter? Then when it says that these things, soon to happen or whatever. That even from your perspective, did it even happen yet? So like, wouldn't you agree that that's not talking to the people back then, because even you agree that that's yet to come.
no, I think they were told about things the very end. Also, that the Old Testament speaks of the end of the age of Israel, and it also talks about the age of the end, the very end of time, and going into eternity. That
Well,
there's
I'll even add this on, like, what is that? Second, I believe it's Second Peter 3:8 says, "For one day with God is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are as one day." So, from God's perspective, it is a short time, right? Like from God's perspective, it is short, right? The time is short. These things are going to soon happen. And speaking from God's perspective, right? So for us, it seems like it's taken a while, but from God's perspective, it's happening relatively soon. So that's an explanation why that I can give for why it might talk about, these things, soon happen, or, near to come, or, so on and so forth, because it's speaking from the
yeah,
heavenly perspective as far as time and how it's different compared to man's perspective of time.
yeah, but a generation. If he says this generation shall not pass till all these things happen, a generation. So say 30 AD, a generation within a generation would be 40 years later, because the generation in the wilderness, that generation had to die, which was 40 years. So, yeah, um, the tribulation happened during that generation before the 40 years was up, is what said this generation shall not pass. It didn't say a future generation and, 1,000 days from now or nothing
So
like
there's like
that.
no end time for us then left today.
I don't believe we're waiting for the tribulation. I believe the end times is going to be, um, yeah, the end of time is futuristic, and yet I don't know why. It says that the tribulation is going to be like, if it happened in 66 AD to 74 AD or around there, then it says that event there will be nothing like it ever again. It won't be worse than that. I don't see, you know, I do see that things could get worse, if we keep
Well,
going.
you're familiar that like 1 million people died with like the Roman Jewish wars in 70 AD, right? Like roughly
Well,
a
imagine.
million, maybe we could say 1.2 million, give or
Yeah.
take a
Well,
few. But wait a second, I want to make a point with that. Acknowledging
mm,
that history, how could you say there couldn't really be much worse than that time if in modern history within the last say 130 years or whatever, we've had multiple wars, including two world wars, which, if you combine them together, resulted in the death of over 100+ million people. That's like what 100 times worse than
so you,
70 AD as far as casualty. So, like,
so
I don't see how you could say that it couldn't really get much worse than what happened back then. You see what I'm saying?
so you think that 100 million people would be worse than destroying, like during the tribulation when great earthquakes and one third of all the sea died, and one third of the people died, and this and that and that. I think
Well, again, I
is
don't believe that stuff happened yet. I believe that's future tense.
well,
Like, say for
well, yeah,
instance, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an
you
example.
compared it,
Like,
but you
go ahead.
compared it to be you compared it to being like 100 million is worse than if the tribulation events are already
Yeah,
over.
but
That would
that
be
hold on
way
a second.
worse
That's
than
not the
100
statement I
million.
said though. Hey, that's why Tazariak says listening is an art. That's not what I said. What I said was, like, if we look at the Roman Jewish wars from like 64 AD to 73 AD, including 70 AD itself, right, with the siege. If we include all that, it adds up to 1 million, but we could say 1.2 million just to be fair. So that event is literally trumped by the First and the Second World War as
So
far
you
as
think
casualties,
so you
right?
think
So you
during
were saying that something really can't get much worse than what happened back then, but I'm giving an example in relatively modern time where it was worse than that.
the Bible explains that the tribulation will be the worst event in history ever,
Right.
and that's what it says, that will be the worst event. Now, the population of the earth during World War One and Two, what, 5 million? So 105 billion or 6 billion or something.
Um,
So
I,
one
I'd say
hundred
it's probably a
million.
couple billion.
Okay, 100 million wouldn't be like. Would that equal if all the earth, everyone on the earth, if according to Revelations, one third of this died off of the people or whatever? I don't know. I can't remember how many people died in the tribulation and all, and the great earthquake that covered the whole, and all this stuff. Are you saying that World War II and World War One put together would be worse than if that happened already? If the tribulation,
If
you think
if
World
the
War One
tribute
and World War II is worse than the tribulation events?
if the let's use a hypothetical argument. If the tribulation actually did happen in the past, which obviously it didn't, but hypothetically, if it did, then that would be worse than World War I and World War II. But my position, of course, is that it has not happened yet. It's in the future. But for
Well, then,
hypothetical argument, if it did happen, then I suppose that would be more catastrophic than the First and Second World War.
yeah, I'm just sharing with you that there are historians that believe that the first,
I mean,
fifth,
but there's historians who believe that Allah exists and can say that Muhammad existed, so you wouldn't say it they're correct then, right?
well, do you believe
But
in
like
any
like
history?
I'm just giving you a comparison. Like, sure, you might know one or two historians who are saying what you're saying. I'm not arguing that, but in the
All
same
right.
in the same fairness, there's historians who will tell you that they've seen evidence of Buddha or Allah,
Mm.
but you wouldn't accept them as being correct, even though they're historians, right? So again, I'm not saying that. Let's see, what do I want to say? All I'm saying is, even though you might know one or two historians that agree with your point, that doesn't negate all these evidences that are being brought up, for lack of better terms.
So you go along with the conventional history,
I mean,
and you
I think that I think there are some lies in history, but I wouldn't throw the whole history book out. I think there's some stuff in there that is certainly valid. But I can agree there are some stuff in there that could be corrupted. I won't deny that. But
Okay,
I don't accept that whole, Tartaria stuff and they like say
yeah,
for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with Tartaria, but they believe like, there used to be like advanced civilizations and then us modern humans came around in like the 1800s. So yeah, I'd totally be against that idea. But yeah, go ahead if you got something.
no, I don't got nothing no more. I'm not going to try to convince you of nothing. I just
I mean, well,
was trying to
like,
share.
did I say something to upset you? Because you seem a little defeated now.
I'm not defeated. I don't. I'm not. I don't care what you believe. I'm trying to share something with you. You don't want to believe it. That's your.
No, but
You
but
know.
but I'm saying that like I don't think I'm being rude to you though. Like I'm literally
I
here
didn't say
having a
you were being
friendly
rude.
conversation with you. But you
I
seem like a little annoyed for some reason though.
no. I just feel like we've come to an impasse, and there's no longer any reason for
Well,
me
what would
to.
you say that impasse is, just for the audience listening?
Well, I just tried to share some different channels you could do some research and maybe do some research. And I've studied your theory, and I know your theory backwards, inside and out, because I've been a Christian for
Okay,
since I was 10, 65,
but I'll
55
show
years.
you
I've been.
that you don't know my theology though, because I'm a Hebrew Israelite. You're not familiar with all of that uh, information, right? With the Hebrew Israelites and their eschatology.
No, I understand that.
Right. So just to make that statement clear, you're not familiar with everything I'm saying because I'm a
I'm
Hebrew
familiar.
Israelite, not just a regular Christian.
Familiar. I am familiar with Hebrew Israelites. I mean, their theory and stuff.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, is there any last minute thing you got to say, or you want to call it a night?
Yeah, I'll call it a night. But thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
Yeah, that's
I'm not.
cool, Rocky. I mean, if you see me live another night, you're welcome to hop on and maybe we could continue the discussion. Hell, maybe you can look over Isaiah 60, what is that? Second Peter 3:10 and Isaiah 14 in your free time, and then maybe you'll come with something else next time.
All right. Yeah, just
All right.
check out conspiracy. Oh no, understanding conspiracies with Paul. His name's Paul. He has a channel. Check out JT follows JC. He's got a pretty good channel. There's a bunch of them, but I those are the only two I can call off right now.
All right, cool, man. If I remember, I'll check them out in my free time. All right, but thank you for coming up. It was a good conversation.
Okay, right. Bye bye.
All right, cool.
Bye.
All right, so that was an interesting conversation. I did not expect to have a discussion with a partial preterist tonight. Hell, usually I'm going back and forth with a full preterist, but it's not too often that I get to talk to a partial preterist. So it was an interesting conversation. About 2.5 hours. I'll probably go to 2.5 hours just to round it up for my OCD. Yeah, but I mean, it was like I don't know what other word to use for that, right? It was just interesting, right? It's just interesting, some of these viewpoints that people have. But what like one thing I said that caught him off guard, you could tell, as I brought up about like Revelation 11:15. It says that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. That caught him off guard right there, you could tell. Because we don't see that today, right? We don't see that. Like all nations on earth are not in obedience to Christ. Like literally, there's I didn't bring this point up, which I should have, but there's nations on earth today, like what is it? What is it? North or South Korea? You got this guy Kim Jong Un. which is literally worshipped as a god. Right, he's literally worshipped as a god, right? They have him set up as a statue down there, and if you disrespect him, you'll get put in jail for the rest of your life or get killed or all of that. So, like, if Christ was ruling the nations today, like, why would Kim be allowed to be set up as a god amongst men? And what about Vladimir Putin? If you disrespect Vlad, you're going to be you're going to show up in the Kremlin's newspaper as if you fell out the top story window or something and be labeled as an accident, but really they killed you because you criticized them. Shit, it happens like every other day over there, right? So again, Vlad's set up as like a unquestionable dictator as well. So like again, if Christ was ruling, like why are these men going around, considered to be such high levels, and some of them even considered to be gods, like Kim. Like, why the hell is that happening? But yeah, thanks for stopping by, Rocky. Interesting conversation. But yeah, it's just bizarre to me. I just find it bizarre. Like, sure, there are certainly some differences between partial preterism and full preterism, as everybody could clearly see. But I mean, both of them are clearly not the correct interpretation of the Bible. Though I will say, a partial preterism seems more reasonable than full preterism, even though both of them are clearly incorrect. But the one does seem more reasonable than the other one. Okay, somebody in the chat said earlier, let me see if I can find it. Bear with me a second. Oh, there it is. DJ Spin. He said, shout out to Primal Man. Who the hell has seen Primal Man recently? Like, as far as I know, the dude was like in a damn cabin in the woods, and nobody's seen that dude for like what, 2 years now, right? That dude was a full preterist, and then he admitted recently that he was wrong, right? He admitted recently that full preterism is not true, right? So he finally seen, after countless debates with people and countless videos talking about preterism, he finally realized that he was wrong. So at least he was man enough to admit that he was wrong, right? I'll give the guy credit for that, right? Primal Man, at least he had the um the willingness to admit that he was in error. And a lot of people won't do that. Like Jeranism is another good example. He was wrong, right? He said there wasn't going to be a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, and we came back, when he seen it, and he admitted he was wrong. Now, just because I said that doesn't mean I believe everything he says, right? Like, people be like, oh, this guy's, sold out for Jaren. It's like, no, it's like, just because I give a guy credit on something, that doesn't mean I believe everything he says. Like, I'll give an example. Like, I'll give Steven Anderson credit. I'll give Sam Shimon credit on like two topics. But that doesn't mean I believe everything they say. I think that's obvious. He said, because we're in Satan's little season, which is after the millennial reign. I mean, hey, look, man, if you want to believe that, you can believe that if you want. Yeah, this is a new face. I haven't seen that individual before. Yeah, hey, he got it right. He got it right. It was 195 countries on Earth. A lot of people don't know that. First of all, if you show somebody a world map without like putting the names of countries on it, the average person like couldn't even point out like 5 countries on a world map if you didn't include the names of the countries. That that's pretty pathetic, right? Like that's pretty damn pathetic. Considering the fact that that's like what is that? Like, is that even 1%? That's like what, 1% of the countries on Earth, and people would struggle to even point that out. It's pretty bizarre, pretty strange. Uh, Let me see here. Yeah, I gotta get going in just a couple of minutes, but I'll round it up to 2.5 hours. Yeah, yeah, good point. The third coming is crazy. Yeah, I wanted to try to, corner him on that point, or, at least allow him to reconsider his stance on it, because the Bible talks about a day of the Lord. It doesn't say the days of the Lord. It's one day, right? Like one event. It's not multiple days, not multiple events. The Bible says that Christ came one time 2,000 years ago. He died and rose again, and then he's coming back a second time, right? And we're still waiting for that second time, which we believe is very near, but nobody knows that day or that hour. But we believe it's coming, right? It hasn't happened 2,000 years ago in 70 AD or the first century. That's clearly not true. It's a future thing. But yeah, third coming's crazy. Yeah, that's not in the Bible. There's nowhere where it says that Christ comes back like two more times after his first coming to earth. That's not in there. It says there's one appearing of Christ, not multiple. I mean, hell, unless you want to consider Samuel Owen as a appearing of Christ, right? He's over there. Oh, I'm Jesus, right? I'm ruling the world from New Jerusalem, trailer park on High Holy Hill Street, right? And ruling the world with a broomstick and a long sword. Like, quite literally, by the way, I'm not even being sarcastic. That's what the dude says. And then he'll say, I'm Jesus. I'm the lion. I'm the roaring lion from the tribe of Edom. Like, whoa, hold on a second. What? The roaring lion from the tribe of Edom? What the hell? The Bible says that, what is that, Hebrews 7:14? Says it's evident that the Lord sprung out of the tribe of Judah. Right? It's evident this Lord sprang out of the tribe of Judah. So if you're Jesus, which is retarded to believe that, but for hypothetical argument, even if he magically was right, like how the hell could you be if you claim you're from Edom, but the Bible says that Christ was from Judah? Like, I mean, it just it's retarded. It makes no sense. Okay, let me see here. Okay, but I'm going to wrap the stream up with that. I thank everybody for stopping by. If anybody made it to the end of the live stream, go ahead and put hashtag, let's see here. Spin. Hashtag spin. We'll give DJ a little shout out. Hashtag spin if anybody made it to the end of the live stream. And I'll see you all around next time.